Nobody knew. Not the reporters. Not the fans. Not even most of his closest friends. While the world watched Muhammad Ali float like a butterfly and sting like a bee in the ring, Ali was quietly building something entirely different. Something that had nothing to do with fame, money, or glory. Something that would shock everyone years later when it finally came to light. The story begins not under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden or the roar of a stadium crowd, but in a dark, forgotten corner of his city. A space where broken windows let in the cold wind, where the floors were cracked and dusty, and where a faded, abandoned warehouse stood silently among old brick buildings. To any passerby, it looked like nothing, just another forgotten building destined to crumble. But to Ali it was an opportunity. He bought it quietly, using his own money, without announcing it to anyone. No press conferences, no photos, no social media. It wasn't for fame or recognition. In fact, if anyone had known, Ali would have shut it down instantly. He wanted it to stay invisible. Because what he was building wasn't for him, it was for others. Inside that warehouse, the transformation began. Old punching bags were hung. A dusty wooden ring took shape. Walls were painted, floors cleaned. Gloves lined up neatly on shelves. The space slowly became a gym, a safe haven for young kids in the neighborhood. Kids who were lost, angry, or directionless. Kids who, without guidance, could easily fall into the wrong paths of life. Ali's reasoning was simple but profound. Champions aren't just made in the ring. They're made in the heart. He knew that while the world celebrated his victories in boxing, there were battles being fought every day by kids who needed hope, discipline, and purpose. And he decided silently, humbly, to give it to them. He never wanted applause. He never wanted headlines. He just wanted a place where young fighters could train, learn, and grow without anyone watching. And that secrecy made it even more powerful. Because sometimes the greatest victories happen far from the cameras. And the quietest acts of kindness leave the loudest impact. After one of the biggest fights of his career, the world expected Muhammad Ali to celebrate in the usual way: glamorous parties, luxury cars, expensive vacations, and headlines screaming his victories. But Ali didn't care about any of that. Fame, money, and trophies weren't his motivation. He wanted to make a difference in silence, without recognition, without applause. That's why he did something almost nobody knew about. He bought an old, abandoned warehouse in a rough part of the city, a place most people avoided. Broken windows, graffiti-stained walls, dusty floors, and the smell of old cement filled the space. To the casual observer it was worthless, just another forgotten building on a busy street. But Ali saw potential. He saw a place where lives could be transformed. No cameras, no press, no announcement to the world. Workers came quietly at night. They repaired the broken windows, swept the dusty floors, and repainted the walls. Slowly, the warehouse started to take shape. Old punching bags were hung from the ceiling. A wooden boxing ring was constructed in the center. Gloves, headgear, and jump ropes lined the walls neatly. Every corner of the space was thoughtfully arranged, not for decoration, but for purpose. Ali's idea was simple yet profound: give kids, who had nothing, a place to train, to channel their anger, to build discipline, and to develop confidence. In this neighborhood, it wasn't uncommon to see young boys and girls running the streets, getting involved in fights, or being pulled into trouble because there was no safe place for them to go. Ali had witnessed it firsthand during his visits. He knew the power of mentorship and discipline, how boxing could turn frustration into focus, and raw energy into skill. But Ali's gym had rules, the most important one: no media. No one was allowed to film, take pictures, or post about it. If anyone had discovered it, the whole purpose would be lost. Ali wanted the kids to grow in a place free from judgment or expectations. He wanted them to train because they wanted to, not because they were seeking fame. Even when famous boxers or friends asked him about the warehouse, he would simply smile and say, "It's just a place to train, that's all." Every evening, Ali would come by himself, sometimes walking quietly into the gym, sometimes putting on gloves and showing the kids proper footwork or punching technique. He wasn't there to perform or to be seen. He was there to teach, to guide, and to inspire. The young fighters didn't know who he was at first. Some thought he was just another trainer. Only gradually did they realize they were learning from the greatest, and even then, Ali never let it change how he treated them. This was his secret, his silent act of generosity. He was building a legacy that had nothing to do with titles or belts. It was about shaping hearts and minds, one punch at a time, in a place where no one was watching. And that secrecy, it made the impact even stronger. Every jab, every lesson, every word of encouragement was genuine, free from expectation, free from ego, free from attention. It wasn't about him. It was about them. By the time the first renovation was complete, the warehouse was unrecognizable. From a forgotten building, it had transformed into a beacon of hope, a quiet, private space where young fighters could become champions not just in the ring, but in life itself. Ali wasn't just building a gym. He was building futures, silently, humbly, and without anyone knowing. The gym was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun spilling through the cracked windows, the smell of fresh paint mixed with sweat and the faint metallic scent of the boxing ring. To anyone walking past, it looked ordinary. But inside, every wall, every bag, every rope told a story of hope, discipline, and transformation. Ali wasn't building a gym for fame. He wasn't building it for glory. The truth was far deeper and far more personal. Years earlier, he had walked through neighborhoods like this one and seen children with no guidance. Kids who had talent, energy, and courage, but no path. Many of them were lost, angry, or forced into crime just to survive. Some of them were orphans. Others came from broken homes. Ali had seen the frustration in their eyes, the rage that had nowhere safe to go, and he knew what it could lead to: violence, despair, and missed potential. He remembered one boy in particular, only 12 but already thrown out of school for fighting. Ali had met him at a local event, watched as he shadowboxed angrily in an empty alley. "I just want to fight," the boy said. "Everyone thinks I'm trouble. Nobody sees me." Ali didn't see trouble. He saw a spark, raw, unpolished, but capable of greatness. And that spark was what inspired him to create the gym in secret. The gym was a sanctuary, yes, but also a challenge. Ali didn't coddle these kids. He demanded discipline, respect, consistency. Every punch, every jab, every footwork drill came with a lesson in life. Patience over anger, focus over distraction, respect over arrogance. Champions aren't made in the ring. Ali once told them quietly, they're made in the heart. And the heart is built before the body. At first, some kids didn't understand. They thought boxing was only about fighting. But Ali taught them it was more than that. Boxing was a tool to channel energy, build confidence, and develop purpose. It was a way to survive in life, not just in the ring. And yet, there was tension. Ali didn't announce this gym to the public because he feared it could be misinterpreted. The media might call it a publicity stunt. Wealthy donors might try to control it. Even well-meaning adults might come in and take the spotlight from the kids. So the gym remained a secret. Ali trained quietly, sometimes arriving at dawn, sometimes late at night, often unnoticed even by the kids. He would watch, step into correct form, give words of encouragement, and then leave, fading into the shadows as if he had never been there. The kids didn't know his fame at first. Some joked about the tall, calm man who watched them shadowbox. Others tried to impress him, thinking he was another coach. Slowly they realized that this wasn't just any coach. It was Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time. And yet, Ali never let his legend overshadow the lesson. He refused to take selfies, refused interviews, refused recognition. "This isn't about me," he would remind them. "This is about you." Conflict wasn't only external, it was internal too. Ali had to reconcile his public life, fame, fights, endorsements, with this private mission. The world saw the champion in the ring, but Ali understood the real battles were being fought far from the cameras. The struggle wasn't against opponents. It was against hopelessness, distraction, and despair. And he had made it his responsibility to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The gym became a crucible. Kids who were once angry and directionless began to transform. They learned respect, humility, and perseverance. They learned that strength alone wasn't enough. Character mattered more. Ali's philosophy echoed through the space. Greatness isn't in winning. It's in becoming the person others can look up to. And the secrecy amplified the impact. No one outside the walls knew who was behind this miracle. No one outside realized that one of the most famous men on earth was investing not in trophies but in lives. Every punch thrown, every lesson given, every drop of sweat was authentic. Free of ego, free of fame, free of expectation. Ali's greatest conflict wasn't in the ring, it was in choosing humility over recognition, action over applause. And that conflict shaped everything inside that gym, quietly molding a generation of fighters who weren't just strong in body, but strong in heart. By the time anyone outside would eventually hear of it, Ali's secret gym had already changed dozens of lives. The seed had been planted, and it all started with a quiet decision, to fight for what mattered even if nobody was watching. The gym had grown quiet now, but the energy inside was tangible. The kids moved with focus, each jab, hook, and uppercut a testament to their discipline. Ali stood in the corner watching them closely, his eyes sharp yet gentle. Every move, every misstep, every moment of doubt was a chance for him to teach. But there was more at play than just boxing. Ali's secret was starting to ripple outward. Some of the kids began to talk. Quietly, among themselves, whispers of "a great man who watches us train" started to circulate. But no one dared to speak openly, and Ali never encouraged it. His mission relied on anonymity. The impact was in the transformation, not the headlines. One evening, a young boy named Jamal, only 14, was struggling with his footwork. His frustration boiled over, and he punched the bag too hard, sending it swinging wildly. Ali approached calmly, patience. Ali said softly, placing a hand on Jamal's shoulder. Speed and power mean nothing without control. Jamal's eyes widened. He had seen famous coaches before, but none who could command respect without shouting. He listened. He absorbed. Meanwhile, outside the warehouse, the world had no idea this secret was unfolding. The neighborhood didn't see the quiet transformation happening inside. To them, it was just another warehouse. But inside, lives were being reshaped. Anger turned to focus, fear turned to confidence, and raw talent began to form into skill. As the weeks passed, Ali continued his visits. Sometimes he stayed the entire evening, other times he would slip in and out unnoticed. The kids began to recognize him, but his presence was subtle. He didn't bask in recognition. He never posed. He never asked for applause. All that mattered was the progress of those inside the gym. But tension began to mount, the kind that only comes from secrets that cannot remain hidden forever. One day, a local journalist, chasing a story on community programs, stumbled upon the warehouse. She peeked through a cracked window and saw the kids training, the ring in the center, and the tall, calm man correcting a young girl's stance. She whispered to her cameraman, "Do you see that? That's Muhammad Ali." Word spread slowly but inevitably. Some parents of the kids began to gossip. "Did you hear? That's Ali himself teaching the kids." But Ali had prepared for this. He reminded the kids. This isn't about being famous. It's about being better than you were yesterday. Even as rumors spread, Ali maintained control over the environment. No cameras, no media, no headlines, just boxing, focus, and heart. Yet, the suspense grew. The community sensed something extraordinary was happening, though no one could see the full picture. Then came the pivotal moment. One afternoon, an older gentleman from the neighborhood walked in, curious about the renovations and activity inside the warehouse. He peeked through the door and froze.
"No way, that's Muhammad Ali!"
The gym went silent. The kids stared at Ali, unsure how to react. Some whispered, some fumbled with their gloves. But Ali stayed calm, giving them a reassuring smile. He didn't make a scene. He didn't announce himself. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. The suspense was electric. The secret had been uncovered, yet not fully. The world didn't know the full extent. That Ali had built this gym entirely in secret, funded it entirely on his own, and created a safe space for dozens of kids who otherwise might have fallen through the cracks. Ali's philosophy resonated through every corner of the warehouse. Greatness isn't measured by fame or applause. It's measured by the lives you touch and the people you lift up. And the suspense, the tension of being discovered yet maintaining humility, only magnified the lesson. By the end of that week, whispers had turned into awe. Parents began to ask how their children could join. Kids from neighboring streets showed up, curious and eager. And Ali remained consistent. No interviews, no photos, no credit. Just lessons, guidance, and unwavering presence. The suspense wasn't just for the audience outside the gym. It was within the hearts of the kids. Each punch they threw, each drill they completed, they carried a secret understanding. They were part of something larger than themselves. Something unseen by the world, but life-changing for them. And that's when the first real reveal would come. Not to the world, not to the media, but to the kids, the parents, and eventually, the community. That greatness sometimes works in silence, impact often comes in secrecy, and heroes don't always seek recognition, they seek change. Muhammad Ali wasn't just teaching boxing. He was teaching patience, humility, focus and resilience, all without a single headline, and the suspense of the secret. That was the lesson itself. Word had spread quietly like a whisper traveling through the streets. By now, the children in Ali's gym knew he was no ordinary coach. They knew his steps, his stance, the calm authority in his voice. They knew that every correction, every word of encouragement, every patient demonstration carried the weight of someone who had not only fought countless battles in the ring, but had also fought for the hearts and futures of young people. And yet, the full truth hadn't reached them, not entirely. They didn't yet understand the scale of his secret. They didn't know that this man, this seemingly quiet, approachable figure in an old leather jacket and worn-out sneakers, was the greatest of all time. They didn't know that he had bought the entire warehouse himself. They didn't know that he had built this sanctuary, funded entirely out of his own pocket for them, and for dozens more like them, with no intention of recognition or reward. That revelation came one late afternoon. Ali had been helping a group of kids perfect their footwork. Jamal, the boy whose anger had first caught Ali's attention months ago, executed a perfect combination of jabs and crosses. Ali nodded, satisfied. Better, he said. Control your power. Let it flow, don't let it explode. At that moment, the door creaked open. A local journalist, who had been tipped off by a parent, stepped inside, camera in hand. The kids froze. Ali turned calm as ever. I'm just teaching, he said in his soft, commanding voice. The journalist whispered, almost breathless, do you realize who you're standing in front of? Ali's calm smile remained. He gestured to the kids. Do they need to know that to learn? The moment was electric. The journalist set down her camera and realized the truth. Muhammad Ali had built this gym in secret, not for fame, not for accolades, but for a purpose far greater than any championship belt could represent. The news spread, slowly at first, and then like wildfire. Parents, neighbors, and local community leaders began showing up. People who had once doubted the potential of these streets now saw it for themselves. Young boys and girls, who once had nothing to turn to, were now practicing under the guidance of a legend, a man who valued their growth over his own recognition. Ali didn't make a spectacle. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pose for pictures. Instead, he allowed the gym, the kids, and their progress to speak for him. One by one, parents came forward. I didn't know you were helping my son, they said. Thank you. Ali shook his head humbly. It wasn't me, it was the work. They did it. And that's when the true impact hit. Kids who had been angry, aimless, or lost began to see themselves differently. Jamal, once frustrated and reckless, was now confident and focused. Others who had been on the verge of giving up found purpose. The gym wasn't just a place to train physically, it had become a crucible for character, resilience, and self-belief. Local media began reporting on it, but Ali remained quiet, giving interviews only when absolutely necessary, always deflecting praise. He allowed the story to be about the children and the community, not himself. And that selflessness only made the revelation more profound. The world learned that true greatness isn't measured in titles, belts, or trophies. It's measured in the lives you touch, the hope you create, and the opportunities you give. By the end of the week, the gym had become a symbol. A symbol of humility, generosity, and vision. Neighbors who had once walked past without notice now saw the magic happening inside. Young fighters who had once doubted themselves now believed in their potential. And Ali. He continued his quiet visits, just as he always had, teaching, guiding, and inspiring. The children never forgot the day the secret was revealed. The lesson was larger than boxing. It was about integrity, humility, and the quiet, unwavering power of doing good for others without seeking recognition. And for the adults who witnessed it, parents, journalists, community members, the lesson was clear. The measure of a person is not in what they achieve for themselves, but in what they give to others. Ali's secret gym was no longer a secret in fact, but its true value remained. A testament to the power of silent action, heartfelt guidance, and the courage to invest in the future without expecting anything in return. The children, the parents, the community, they had seen the truth. Muhammad Ali had not just created a space to train fighters. He had built a legacy that would inspire generations, long after the cameras stopped rolling and the headlines faded. And that legacy, it was priceless. Months passed since the secret of Muhammad Ali's gym became known to the neighborhood. The initial shock had faded, replaced by admiration, gratitude, and inspiration. But for Ali, nothing had changed. He continued to visit quietly, guiding the kids, correcting their footwork, and reminding them of the lessons that mattered most: humility, discipline, respect, and resilience. The children had grown not just stronger, but wiser. Jamal, who had once thrown punches in anger, now moved with precision and calm confidence. He learned to control his energy, channel his frustration, and turn challenges into opportunities. Others followed suit. Girls and boys who had once wandered the streets with nowhere to go now had a purpose, a routine, and a safe haven. Ali had always believed that true change came from the heart, not the spotlight. The gym had been his secret for a reason. He wanted the transformation to be authentic, not fueled by fame or public approval. And even as the media began to cover the story more widely, Ali's philosophy remained the same. This isn't about me, he reminded the kids one afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the warehouse walls. This is about you. About what you do with what you've been given. Parents began to notice changes in their children, not just physical strength, but confidence, self-respect, and focus. Teachers reported improvements in schoolwork, behavior, and social skills. The neighborhood itself began to transform. Where once there had been uncertainty, there was now hope. Where there had been anger, there was discipline. The gym became a hub for mentorship. Former students returned to help train the next generation, passing down not only boxing skills but life lessons they had learned from Ali. Respect everyone, they would say. Work hard, even when no one is watching. Be better than yesterday. Ali rarely spoke about his own fame. When asked why he had built the gym in secret, he simply smiled. If I told people, it becomes charity. If I stay quiet, it becomes character. That quiet approach resonated deeply with everyone involved. The gym was no longer just a building. It was a living testament to the power of humility, selflessness, and the unseen influence of one person willing to invest in others without expecting anything in return. Years later, the impact of Ali's secret gym could be seen in every corner of the community. Kids who had once struggled were now young adults achieving success in their careers, staying out of trouble, and becoming mentors themselves. Some went on to professional boxing careers. Others became teachers, coaches, and community leaders. All of them carried the lessons they had learned from Ali, lessons that extended far beyond the ring. Even the parents spoke of transformation. Many admitted they had initially doubted the value of boxing for their children, fearing aggression rather than guidance. But watching the discipline, focus, and confidence develop over time, they realized the deeper truth. Ali hadn't just built a gym. He had built a foundation for life, a place where resilience, respect, and humility were nurtured alongside athletic skill. And for Ali, the true reward was simple: seeing the growth, potential, and success of the young people he had quietly guided. He never demanded thanks, never sought recognition, and never posed for publicity. The gym, the kids, and their futures were his reward. Through this quiet, persistent work, Ali taught a lesson far more enduring than any championship belt could convey. Real greatness isn't about fame, power, or money. Real greatness is the ability to touch lives, to build character, and to leave the world better than you found it. And that was Ali's true legacy, one that would echo for generations. A secret gym, once hidden in a forgotten warehouse, had become a beacon of hope. A quiet act of selflessness had become a powerful lesson in humility, perseverance, and heart. Muhammad Ali had fought in the world's biggest arenas, but the greatest fight of all had been fought in silence, shaping hearts, inspiring futures, and proving that the measure of a champion is not how loud the world cheers for you, but how many lives you lift when no one is watching. Even years later, when the stories were told and retold, when articles, documentaries, and tributes appeared, one thing remained unchanged: the gym, the lessons, and the impact were never about Ali's fame. They were about the people whose lives he had quietly transformed, one punch, one word, and one act of guidance at a time. That's the resolution. That's the legacy. And that's why Muhammad Ali's secret gym will never be forgotten. The sun was setting over the warehouse gym, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors and the ropes of the boxing ring. The kids had finished their evening drills, sweat glistening on their foreheads, their hearts racing not just from physical exertion, but from something far more profound: a sense of purpose. Muhammad Ali didn't linger for applause. He didn't pose for photos or give interviews. He simply stood for a moment, watching them, a faint smile on his face. The impact of his secret work wasn't in headlines or fame. It was in the young lives being quietly reshaped, in confidence growing where insecurity had once lived, and in discipline taking root where chaos had threatened to dominate. This was the true power of Ali, not just as a boxer but as a human being. The gym he built in secret was a symbol, a living lesson that greatness isn't measured by what the world sees, but by what the world doesn't see. It's measured in kindness, humility, and the quiet, persistent efforts to make a difference. Parents, teachers, and neighbors had begun to understand this truth. They watched as children who had once been angry or lost transformed into young people with focus, confidence, and self-respect. Some pursued boxing professionally. Others became mentors, teachers, or leaders in the community. The lessons of the gym extended far beyond punches and footwork. They were lessons of life itself. Ali had taught them that strength alone isn't enough. Discipline is essential. Respect is mandatory. Humility is powerful. True champions aren't just those who win in the ring, but those who rise in life, who face challenges with integrity, and who lift others while remaining unseen. And here lies the ultimate moral: respect isn't something you show only to the famous, the powerful, or the wealthy. It's something you give to everyone, especially when no one is watching. Because one day, the person you underestimate may be the one shaping your future, lifting you up, or teaching you the most important lesson of all. Ali had lived by this principle. He could have used his fame, money, and influence to dominate headlines, take credit, and demand recognition. Instead, he chose the quiet path. He built a gym not for himself, but for the community. He empowered children without seeking reward. He changed lives without expectation. And in doing so, he left behind a legacy far greater than any championship belt could ever symbolize. Even as stories about the secret gym spread, the most important lesson remained unseen by many. Greatness is silent. True strength comes not from boosting, but from giving. True power is measured by impact, not applause. Ali had fought some of the fiercest battles the world has ever seen. But the most enduring victory was fought quietly, in that warehouse, through the lives he touched and the hearts he transformed. This is a story that should inspire everyone watching, young and old, famous or unknown. It reminds us that our actions matter, that integrity matters, and that humility is a form of courage. It challenges us to ask ourselves, how are we lifting others? How are we creating impact that doesn't need recognition? So, here's the call to action for everyone watching this story. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Who can you help quietly, without applause? Who can you inspire without expectation? And who in your life deserves respect, not because of what they have, but because of who they are? Type ALI in the comments if you believe that true strength is humility. Share where you're watching from. Every story of kindness matters, every act of respect counts, and together we can honor the legacy of someone who gave quietly, profoundly, and selflessly. Muhammad Ali wasn't just the greatest in the ring, he was the greatest in heart. And the secret gym, built with no fanfare and no expectation, is proof that true greatness is measured not by the spotlight, but by the lives we touch and the courage we give to others, in silence, in patience, and in humility. Because in the end, it's not about being seen, it's about making a difference. And that is a lesson worth remembering forever.